First off, everyone needs to listen to your podcast. I think you guys are probably my most favorite industry podcast out there because you guys really teach actors how to actually be entrepreneurs, how to actually market themselves. So I also do feel like every actor should think of themselves as a business person.
Hey, friends, and welcome to another episode of Creative Risk. Solo today without Mike, although I have a really special guest. And I did not realize how much this conversation was going to mean to me, or I knew it would mean a lot because we have Molly Smith on, the amazing Molly Smith, who was the artistic director of Arena Stage for 25 years in DC, where, as you can imagine, I met and worked with her. But the convo just was more than that, and interestingly enough, felt full circle because of so much of what we talk about. Just for some context, Molly Smith is the artistic director emeritus of Arena Stage, where she led from 1998 to 2023 and helped redefine what a major American regional theater could be. A passionate advocate for new plays, she directed over 30 productions at Arena, everything from Oklahoma and My Fair Lady to The Originalist and Mother Courage with Kathleen Turner. Her work has also been seen on Broadway, off-Broadway, and across the U.S. and Canada. Before Arena, she founded Perseverance Theater in Alaska, where she served as artistic director for nearly 20 years. She spearheaded Arena's transformation into the Mead Center for American Theater, launched the ambitious Power Play cycle that we talked a little bit about, and during the pandemic created a whole suite of digital programming, including 2 original films and Molly's Salon, which we also speak about, to support artists during the shutdown. Her legacy is one of bold vision, civic engagement, and deep commitment to the American theater. And I don't want to be hyperbolic, but Molly is sort of a hero for me. In many ways, I was a young artistic director in DC, and I looked up to her because of her standing in the community and what she represented for the community, and how she represented herself. Of course, all of her creative work. I was a huge fan of what she was making and was always there, of course, to see it, and was super proud to be able to be part of one of her shows that, as we talk about, sort of changed the trajectory of my own career. So I'm super grateful that she was so open and gave so much of her time. And for those of you who are listening, there's a few moments when she turns her computer to show us her backyard in Alaska, which her backyard is the ocean. A beautiful landscape, mountains. She saw a humpback whale there the other day. Anyway, enjoy. I do want to talk a little bit about, what life has been post 25 years at Arena, and obviously knowing that you were planning for it. But I want to go back because I know I've said things like this, I've shared with you over the years, what specifically like our brief experience doing Fiddler was together, but I talk about it more than you might realize all these years later, 10 years, I guess, or so later now, because I wouldn't be living in New York, and I wouldn't have had the opportunities that I had here if it wasn't for that experience. And that's not BS, really. And so I share that because I want to ask you 2 questions off the bat. Number one of the things that was so amazing for me was when we started that process of Fiddler, the 5 or so days we sat at the table, and I'll never forget asking dancers in the show, well, what do you think? Why are you here? What's your point of view? And everybody in the room felt invested in, cared for, respected, culminating right before we opened, as you very well know. So this is more for our listeners. But you brought everyone together in the theater, and we sat there, and one by one, didn't matter whose role it was, you shared something valuable that they brought to the story. And I've never experienced anything like that since. And I guess, Molly, I know you probably have to have some awareness of your own style and intention there, But can you speak to what that was for you, or what that was stylistically or process wise? Because it has not only sat with me, but again, it is the reason why I was even comfortable doing musicals on a larger scale moving forward.
Well, so great. When I was a young theater artist up here in Alaska, I wanted to learn from the best. So there was a really interesting program at Champaign Urbana. And in it, they brought in some of the great directors. It would be people like Lee Brewer and Friedman and who else was it? Just some really, really good directors. And you just sat and watched them work. And so I've always thought one of my greatest strengths is as a synthesizer. And so as I watched them work, I thought, okay, that's a very interesting way to work. Now I need to take that and make it my own in one way or another. And I think it was Gerald Friedman who did a process of asking lots of questions at the table. And I thought, of course, because this whole idea that the director is the be end and the all of the whole room is just total bullshit. Because the only way that it's possible to move an actor into great work, I think, is by actually questioning them and finding a way inside of them. So I took that idea and kind of translated it to, oh, I know what I'm going to do. The first 5 days of any rehearsal process, didn't matter if it was a musical or a straight play, we're going to sit around the table. And I wanted to use a process that was each actor could ask anybody else any question that they are curious about. You only can't ask leading questions. Because sometimes what actors will do is, oh, I know the way that they should play this role. Therefore, I'm going to lead them into it. Okay, I shut that down all the time. So it's about your curiosity about the world, your curiosity about the character, your curiosity about why did they do what they did. And that was a process that worked really well. It didn't matter whether it was professional actors, whether it was community actors, whether it was somebody I pulled off a bar stool in Juneau, Alaska and threw on stage. It did not matter, because what it did is it awakened each person's creativity. And while you're asking questions, what you're also really doing is building an ensemble.
Mm.
Now, people didn't know that. That was the other piece of it that was happening. And I also knew what I wanted to do at the end of that week was something that would put a shock through the system of the group. So each actor needed to create a 3-minute improvisation that they would perform on their own in front of all of their colleagues, that would have
Right.
probably 4 or 5 different ideas in it.
That's right.
And that I got from watching Anne Bogart work, because she often would do these combination improvs. So I thought, okay, I'll put something like, you need to have a moon, you need to have a piece of music, it needs to be a critical turning point in your life, and I need 20 seconds of marked silence in it. So maybe it'd be 4 or 5 things like that. It always would be a piece of nature, like it would be stars, or it would be the ocean, or it would be whatever it would be. It needed to be something that somehow was contextualized with the piece. And that just shot total fear through each and every actor. It didn't matter whether they were somebody who had been acting for 50 years or 2 years. What it did, though, because it's also a very gentle approach, we watch each actor get up and perform their piece, and then the whole group feeds them back what they're seeing.
Yes.
So it helps cement whatever it is that they're doing. And it helps every other actor understand, oh, I see what they're doing. I see how I could fit into that within the world. And it gave each actor respect for every actor, no matter whether it was somebody who was a Nicky New guy or somebody who'd been doing it for years or somebody who was in a major role or somebody who was in a small role. I don't, I like calling everybody an ensemble. I really dislike the whole thing in musical theater where it's the leads and then it's like, no. The show will be at its best if every single person is incredible. And so I started from that perspective. And, it's something that I started in Alaska and I carried it through to Arena. Now, people were particularly shocked when I was using these kinds of processes with musicals because they were, no, no, no. What we have to do is split everybody up right away. You go into music, you go into dance. And I was, no, no, no. It's all about the storytelling. It's all about each person being an artist. And I would also do other pieces that had to do with everybody getting to know each other. I do mapping exercises. I did a lot of different exercises that I would find, and then I would kind of translate into the theater. And the things that worked, I kept, and the things that didn't work, I didn't keep. But what I really wanted to do is create the most powerful ensemble who could not just make things happen, but that could improvise on their feet. Because I think acting is really about improvising, right? You know a lot of information. And then if you're really alive to the moment, then you're playing with each individual every single time that you're on stage with them. Yeah. So that really helped with that. And then at the end, even though everybody was exhausted and I was exhausted, I would spend a couple days with my assistant going through each actor and saying, okay, what's the gift that they're bringing? What's the idea that they've been bringing? And write it all down. And then I would do a final speech that would be, from my perspective, what the production had been. And then talk to each actor. And then have cookies and drinks and things like that. Yeah. And it was a very important final launch into the production. Because a couple days before any show opens, everybody is frazzled, they're upset, they don't know how well they're doing, they're scared, their family is coming, exactly. Their whole house is a mess because they haven't cleaned it, whatever. Needed to give everybody that gift, which is a launch to truly meeting the audience. And I've never seen it fail. I tried at one point not doing it. People freaked because, my stage manager freaked. Same thing with the improvisation, same thing with some of the other things. I tried doing it differently. They freaked. So I thought, okay, obviously, Molly, this is part of your style of directing. So it needs to be utilized with every group. So I will tell you, Joshua, a number of people who've worked with me before then have taken these processes and used them in many different productions, because I'll hear back from actors saying, oh, my director just used that. And it's like, fantastic. Yeah. That's what it's about. We steal from each other and we translate from each other.
Well, I have to tell you, I don't know if you know this, but Gerald was my teacher. He was my dean when I went to School of the Arts and directed me in Sunday in the Park with George. And I didn't know that, and I'm saying this because when you were saying that and you said Friedman, I asked the question because I had not sensed Gerald, and not until our experience about 10 years later had I had something quite as unearthing. And the other thing, Molly, I don't know if you know this, and I just remember this when you were saying it. I went to the conversation you had with Anne Bogart in New York. It was in a really small room.
Yeah. And it was a terrible night. It was a cold night.
But because I used to make and then you act, making art in an unpredictable world. in
Yeah,
my
yeah, yeah.
bag. And I'll never
Oh, wow.
forget, I was really, Anne Bogart was super inspiring to me as well.
Yep.
And I remember one day I ran into her in a PAX and I had the book in my bag and she didn't know me. And I said, "Oh, Miss Bogart," and I pulled the book out. She goes, "What are you doing with my book?" I said, "I carried it in my bag." And I really did. I had it in my bag. And I'm saying this because to talk about Gerald and Anne Bogart and of course this is not about me, but selfishly, of course this experience was so impactful because it was like a charting of my own creative stars of what was inspiring to me.
Yep. Yep.
One more process question and related to your style I'm curious about. My sense is that you always did an incredible job as a leader and as a director simply steering clear of drama, not necessarily conflict, right? But drama. Does that feel true to you? And
Mhm.
has that been intentional?
In my early years, I had a lot of people that I worked with who would bring a lot of drama in the room. I didn't find it improved anything. So I would actually call or have my assistant call on every actor that I was going to cast. And if people said to me, she's really good, but she's a total pain in the ass, I'd call back and say, was it worth it? And people would be, uh, I think it was worth it. I'd say no.
Not worth
I'm going to go with a
it.
different actor. It ultimately wasn't worth it to me because I find that the best creativity for me as a director is when I can be unconscious about the work, when I can use my subconscious, when I can really go with whatever the particular flow is and find my way through it. Improvising, very much like what I'm asking the actors to do. I come into every rehearsal process with a ton of information and use a lot of dramaturgy and know like imagery that I want to somehow get to. And then a lot of that I let go of because I actually then meet the actors and the designers. And then I start thinking, okay, this is not going to work for this particular act. Let's shift it in another way. And that has been something that has just been a hallmark for me.
Sure.
And as long as I have like 3 strong ideas for each show, that's what I care about. And that each actor would be able to talk about those ideas. And sometimes it's only 2 ideas. Like I think one of the big ideas that I worked with you guys is I was very interested in how Jewish people through the ages have been completely nomadic and continue to be nomadic. And it didn't matter
Mm,
where or when, and that was worldwide. So that was something very important to me about that closing image and the
yes.
beginning image of the circling, and all of you picking up and leaving and picking up and leaving and picking up and leaving. That was core to Jewish people.
Yes.
And so that was something that I really wanted
Mm,
within our production. Um, and when I think about what's happening with Jewish people now, I also wanted to do it because there was a lot of anti-Semitic activity even then, and I thought, what better way to combat that than to create a show like this that is all about the culture, the ritual, the love of Jewish people everywhere.
well, I have to say, I'm sorry. There's so many things I want to share. So, to our listeners, I just want to talk to Molly. So apologies for this is just going to be a conversation. I just want to say, Oklahoma, My Fair Lady, all the shows I saw of you, I was just bringing those up because I remember them so distinctly. They all had a real creative communal vibe. And you know who I just cast as Stella in Streetcar was June Schreiner.
She told me,
Isn't that so funny?
yeah,
And Molly, though, I hadn't, she met, our worlds brought us back together. And I said, June, I know you from years ago when you sort of broke onto the scene and did that. And by the way, she's an amazing Stella.
Yeah.
I mean, she's just so perfect. But
Yeah.
it's all roads lead back to Molly Smith somehow. Okay, let's go back to the beginning though, Molly.
But you know what? You know what?
Oh, please.
My core thing about the American musical, and I started doing this early on because I was somebody who hated the American musical. I didn't want to do it. I was only doing straight plays. It wasn't until I came to Arena and really started to see how people were responding to musicals and how responses in their body. And I just thought, okay, what the fuck is my problem? So the first big one that I did was South Pacific. And I thought, if I'm going to do this, I have to reinvent it. And what I really want to reinvent is the great American musical, which of course is Rodgers and Hammerstein.
Sure.
And Lerner and Loewe. And, you know, it was all of these giants of the American theater. And how can we really make them about right now? And so the area I was mostly interested in really had to do with race and racism. So the beginning of the piece, I said to Bayard Lee, who was a choreographer, and George Fulgeniti Shakar, who was doing the music. Yes. Okay, I'm going to stage the overture. And they said, okay, fine. And so what I really wanted to do was all of these beautiful island people really moving through the Fitch, because the Fitch is a theater that is in the round, but really it's in this kind of a shape. And move all of them through so that we see what this beautiful island life is. And then moved into all of the military and all of their white uniforms coming in and cutting a swath through it.
Yeah.
So setting up white and brown immediately, and then really pushing through on the racism that is in Nellie Forbush's heart. And so finding ways to make that spring forward and to see Nellie make the kind of transition that she makes. Okay, that was important to me. It was really important to me on Oklahoma, because that was going to be the first new musical, first thing that was done when we really did the major shift at Arena Stage to move it into being a center, adding a third theater, doing major renovations. Beyond renovations, it was really creating a whole new idea for what Arena was. And so Eugene was my set designer on it. And I talked to him about how it needs to be this whole sense of what's new. And I wanted to do Oklahoma, which some of my staff and some of my board said, that is the most ridiculous thing I've ever heard. It's a terrible musical. Why are you going to do it? And I said, well, I've just been doing a lot of reading about it. And this is an area of the country that in the great rush for land, it was Native American communities who came, Asian American, African American. They all ran for land. And it was when it was going from being a territory into being a state. And I thought, oh, okay, what I can do then, because historically it's a bounce to that, is I will make it modern by having all of the races and the cultures mix. Although always casting through family lines. So if Lori was African American, her aunt then, who was Ife Butler, was African American, finding ways to drive it in that way, because I don't want the audience to be confused. But in doing that, it was the first time Oklahoma had ever been seen with anything but white people and one person who is the whatever
Ali Hakim.
Ali Hakim.
Mm-hmm.
One person who was Ali Hakim.
It was Nehal.
Nehal. And he was brilliant in it.
Mm-hmm.
It was transformational because of that. And from that moment on, there's never been a major production that hasn't been cross-cultural in that way.
Yes, that's so true.
So right away, within a year or two, somebody did an all African-American production. Somebody else did a production with all people of color. I mean, it changed the paradigm. And I thought, okay, that's what I like. That's what I like doing something like that, or something like My Fair Lady, where I thought, why couldn't there be an Asian American
That's right.
who
Oh,
plays
Manna Nichols.
Manna
That's
Nichols,
right. Yes,
right?
of
And then her
course.
father had to be Asian American.
Yes.
Or on something like Carousel, I was kind of interested in uncovering what that relationship between the two of them was. And it was Nick and Betsy played the two
Yes.
major roles, and they were extraordinary. It was happened the first time that Trump was elected. We opened like 2 days later. It was really, really painful, but it was finding a way to dig into the kind of, I don't remember if it was really misogyny or it was the kind of powerful moments that had to do with Billy's brutal treatment of her. But for me, it's always about, if we're going to look at these musicals, it always has to be, what is it for this moment in time?
Right.
And how can we reinvent it? Because they're great pieces of literature. That was my argument. That was my paradigm shift. If I love Shakespeare because he has something to say for everyday life. Why aren't we looking at the Great American Musical in the same way?
Sure.
And that helped shift people's thinking about what the American musical was. It wasn't just a piece of glorious entertainment. Yes, of course, it's a piece of glorious entertainment, but what does it have to say? But that's always been my through line, Joshua. Where are we in this moment in time?
And how does this piece reflect on that?
Center.
Ultimately, yeah.
Because they're great pieces of theater, just like Othello is a great piece of theater, just like Cat on a Hot Tin Roof is a great piece of theater, just like Streetcar Named Desire is a great piece of theater. So my whole thing was, I wanted to be able to elevate the art form. And that's what I started writing about. Started writing about how I hated the American musical. I thought it was bullshit. I thought it was blah, blah, blah. Then the first day after I directed South Pacific, whenever that was, over 20 years ago, I woke up in the morning and I said to Suzanne, I was born to direct musicals. And then the rest of my career was all about musical theater. So I went headfirst into it, and new plays, because I'd done new plays for my entire career. I didn't leave that behind. But I kind of stopped doing classic plays. I just moved into the American musical. And I think I directed almost every gold standard musical that you can think of.
Isn't that funny? Well, I just want to acknowledge too that it sounds like maybe the challenge for you, or I don't mean challenges and it was difficult. I mean, the challenge ahead of you was when you took over Arena, and I do want to talk about Perseverance a bit, but when you took over Arena, if I was reading correctly, essentially what was put in front of you was, how does Arena become the National Center for American Artists? How does this organization become that? And musical theater is an American art form. It was, that we created it, so to speak. I don't mean that in the American way.
It's true.
But
we created it.
So does that feel true? Like you were sort of put forth with this unique challenge?
Well, when I came and I spoke to the search committee, they said, if you were the artistic director, what would you do at Arena? And it was immediate for me. I said, there's two different ways one could do to really put a stamp on Arena, because they were worried that Arena's Frigion had left it, because there were now 80 theaters in Washington, D.C., and Arena was one of many. So how could it really launch? And I said there's two that I would look at. One would be all international work. You could bring in great international artists, you could bring in great international companies. This is a place where people go to learn about America. And this is a place, it's embassy, right? It's just, why not do the great French authors, do the great, right. And I said, and the other one would be to focus entirely on American voices and American artists.
Mm.
And they said, which one for you? And I said, no question, American artists. And they said, why? And I said, because I think Washington, D.C. is a crossroads. Because I'm sick of all of my friends always looking over their shoulder at what's happening in Britain. And, I come from an Irish family. And so it's really all about who we are as Americans.
Yeah.
And they grabbed on at that. And they said, yes, okay, this is a new idea. It was a new idea for them. And so then from the beginning, that's what we were producing. And from the beginning, I walked the streets of Washington, D.C., even though I've been a student there at American University and Catholic University. And I thought, yeah, it's a black and white city. How are we going to reflect that? So I realized that I wanted to consistently do at least 2 shows a year that were about the African American experience. And I started with music, like what Dinah was and things like that. And Paul Lawrence Dunbar and people that African American people would be really attracted to. And as we did that, and as we did that kind of consistency over the first 5 years, boom, we were like 40% African American. When I came, it was 5%.
Wow.
Even though Doug and Zelda had sometimes been doing African American plays, there wasn't a consistency.
Right.
It needed to be a consistency
To build trust and relationships.
That's exactly right. That's exactly right.
Yeah.
Which for years, that kind of idea of trust and relationship and community has been a dirty word in the theater. Not now, but 30 years ago, it was. People would say, well, that's not art.
Well, before we go dig further into Arena and what that afforded you, because side note, I saw the picture of you with Charles Randolph Wright on Facebook. I think it was not too long ago,
Yeah.
and I think you were in a rehearsal of his up here in New York. And I was thinking, my gosh, Molly, you must have worked with. I mean, you've worked with so many of the world's preeminent, greatest artists of our time. I mean, that's you've done that, and I would argue that Arena, being this national center for American artists, has obviously afforded a lot of that opportunity. But let's just briefly go back to Perseverance, briefly.
Yeah.
So I think it was 1979 that you founded Perseverance, and I can't remember if it was you or Suzanne who I was just speaking with before you hopped on, who said, in Alaska there's 700,000 people, I think you said, and yet it's the size of the fifth of the United States. So what was it to build a theater still going today from scratch in such a remote location? And how did that time shape your artistic instincts?
Yeah, great questions. So my family moved here when I was 16. So I've lived in Alaska for 25 or 30 years on and off. And I thought I was going to be a lawyer. So I was in a pre-law degree when I went to the University of Alaska in Fairbanks. But then a friend of mine and I went and traveled to Europe with our backpacks on. And I was 19. In the middle of that, I realized, oh, I know what I'm going to do. I'm going to start a theater in Juneau. That's what I'm going to do. So we came back, and I went to my teachers at the University of Alaska, and I told them that I was going to start a theater in Alaska. And they patted me on the back and they said, "That's very nice, dear." And I left. I just left. I thought, I'm not going to get what I need here. So went to the East Coast, to Washington, D.C. My former husband was in the Naval Academy. He also was from Alaska. And I went to Catholic U for finish my undergrad, and then American U to get my graduate degree, where I also came into contact with great experimenters like Richard Schechner was with us for weeks. Mabu Mines was with us for weeks. I mean, it was great. Some of the great experimenters were there. And I also worked at St. Elizabeth's Hospital, which had 6,000 people there, patients there. And I worked with the criminally insane. I worked with drug addicts. I worked with chronics. And what I learned there, I took into the rehearsal hall, because there was nothing that would be thrown at me in a rehearsal hall that I hadn't already experienced at St. Elizabeth's Hospital. So I worked with the craziest of the craziest, which was fantastic. So I was on the East Coast with my former husband, finishing school, and then I was working in small theaters like New Playwrights Theater. Joy Zinnemann, who started the Studio Theater, was one of the students, one of my colleagues at American University. It was like 14 of us for this 1-year program. And out of that number, 4 or 5 of us started theaters, including Bart Whiteman. I mean, what was that alchemy that came out of that? And anyway, Joy then started her acting conservatory. And after about a year, I became the first other teacher teaching her method. And she's a brilliant teacher. And then after, when I was 26, my former husband and I, Billy, moved back to Alaska, carting 50 used theater seats with us.
50 new from across the country.
50 used theater seats.
Wow.
Now, we didn't carry it with us because he was in the military. We had them all stuffed in our backyard garage. And the guy came to pick it up from the military because he was taking all of our household stuff.
Yeah.
He opened the door and he said, "Oh, no." And Billy said, "Well, call him." So he called up the Navy and said, "This guy has got all these old clunky theater seats here. And bless their literal hearts, they went through the papers and they said, nope, says right here, household items, 50 used theater seats, you got to take them." So the military helped start a theater in Alaska. So that went to Alaska. And I thought it was going to take 5 years to start the theater. Within 6 months, we were up and running.
Wow.
We created a show because I was on a walk with my sister and I said, "I don't know what to do for the first show." And she said, "Why don't you do something about, seniors, pioneers, old people?" I said, "I don't want to do gin game or something like that." And then I went, oh, Bridget, that's a great idea. How about if I interviewed pioneers who've been here for 50, 60, 70 years about what they have done here, from gold mining to working in the mines to, working as fishermen, as hunters, as that whole thing. So I interviewed 35 people. And then a friend of mine, Susie Gregg Fowler, who's a wonderful writer, listened to all of these tapes. She translated it all. We put it into a reader's theater piece, and I cast the 6 best storytellers.
From the town, the locals. Wow.
Who had been some of the 6 out of the 35 people that I'd interviewed.
Yes.
And I knew it'd have to be a reader's theater piece because nobody could remember anything because they were like in their 90s, right? 80s and
Yes.
90s.
Yes.
And I would rehearse in the church social hall. And as the weeks went by, they got worse and worse.
The
I just
performers, the stories.
I just thought, oh my God, I may as well get into a car and go out to the airport and run back to Washington, D.C., because this is going to be a total waste of everything. And on opening night, we put out 50 chairs, just regular chairs. It wasn't the theater chairs.
It wasn't the theater chairs after all that.
And people came, and suddenly these people turned on, and I realized, oh, of course, they're storytellers. They didn't want to tell me the same stories again, but they were telling other people. And the next night we put out another 20 chairs. And the next night, pretty soon we had people down the block lining up.
Wow.
To come and see it, because it was at that moment, Alaska was very young. It was people in their 20s and 30s. So to hear from people who had actually built this place was extraordinary. That built the theater. It eventually ran a couple hundred times. It was made into a documentary. It was all over the place. And I eventually gave all of these 35 interviews to the State Museum and Library so that people could listen to them if they ever wanted to. And on closing night, my friend Kate Bounds, who also started the theater with me, I said, we're a theater. We can't be in church social halls. We need a place where we can store our stuff. Where is that? And she said, there's a bar that is for rent over in Douglas. So we took off in a car and went over. And it was a bar that had the best pool table in town, used to. Now it was kind of a liquor store. We looked at it. My former husband, Billy, was a designer. Another friend was there. He was also a designer. We looked at it, and it was $800 a month. Let's do it. So we rented it. Within 16 days, renovated the place, put in those old seats, and added 30 more. So we had 82.
Yeah.
And opened the theater. And that was in 79. And it's still going today.
Now, have you been? So do you go back now that you're...
Yeah.
How far away are you from it?
Well, right now I'm in Haines, so I'm about 90 miles from Juneau. But when I'm in Juneau, it's right across the bridge. It's in Douglas.
Now,
and
I know...
went from that 82 seats into building a new theater in the backyard that had 150 seats. So it has the potential of 2 theaters in it. And it has places for people in terms of office and things like that. There's a small staff there. And Leslie Aishi, who is the one who runs it, just won the Zelda Fitchandler.
Yeah.
And she also just won another award from somebody else because she does a lot of really remarkable work around DEI. And she works with a lot of Native artists here.
In Alaska.
Yes.
Now, I believe you ran Perseverance for about 20 years or so before...
19.
Yeah, before going to Arena. And I'm sure, that was probably difficult to give 20 years of your child, the baby that is Perseverance. But then what an opportunity to, again, have this unique challenge of taking a theater and creating essentially a center for American artists.
Right.
So I imagine that was the appeal, but just briefly talk about that transition. Was it a big challenge to go from something so homegrown that was really yours into something much more strategic and national in some ways?
Yeah. Well, it's interesting because in Alaska, what I wanted was a theater of, by, and about Alaskans. So in a way, that was my template.
Yes.
I didn't realize that until years later, because I was then creating at Arena of, by, and about Americans.
Yeah.
So how interesting, right?
Yeah.
Started small, petri dish,
Yeah.
and went to large. I think it was a shock for people that I ended up in this position at Arena. When I'd been a student there, I had gone and seen a lot of productions at Arena. I mean, it was and is a great theater, and really studied what Zelda had to say. Took a lot of lessons that I learned from her when I started my theater in Alaska, and a lot of lessons from Joy Zinnemann. Again, learning from the best,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Choosing what you choose to do. And when I came to Arena, my partner Suzanne, who's an organizational development specialist, I went there and I said, it's hard because there's a lot of things that are not working about Arena. One thing was the building itself. It was demoralizing. It had basically fallen into disrepair.
Mm.
And that was my argument with the board as well, which is it's one of the great theaters in America, and it looks like a modest library that's falling apart. Can't do that. We're rehearsing across the street in the basement of a grocery store where we have to suck gas every time we go in. Is this one of the great theaters? So that was one of the arguments as we were raising money for it as well. So I knew that that was going to be really important. And that was one of the things I'd said to the search committee. You may choose me, you may not choose me, but whoever you get has got to be gutsy enough to really drive this with the board and with the staff and with the community to make this happen, you know? And so I think when I came to Arena, because I saw there were so many kind of internal problems, Suzanne said, I can take you guys through a whole system that is ask and tell. So Stephen Richard, who was the executive director, and myself sat with every department in the theater. They could ask us anything and they could tell us anything, all the individuals. And Suzanne just wrote all of this stuff up on all of these white pieces of paper. And it was profound. And from that really helped me with Stephen map what the next 5 years would be. Because we learned from their hearts and from their souls what they were pissed off about, what they were excited about, what they were demoralized about, what they thought was broken, what they thought didn't work anymore, what they were sad about. It was profound. And that helped us drive into kind of everything, Joshua.
Yeah.
So was I afraid? I think, sure. I'm sure at some point I was afraid, but I was so energized by the challenge. And I also thought, oh, good. There's so many things that are wrong. I wouldn't want to go into a place that was working like a spinning top.
Yeah.
There were so many things that we can work on, that we can make happen together. Let's do it. So it took us 12 years to fundraise, to do the architecture, to do the ideas behind the new center. It took us 12 years to do that.
Yeah.
And I think that anything worth doing takes time. So I meet a lot of young people who go into theaters and they're there for 3 years and then they hopscotch to another theater and another theater. And they're kind of, it's just kind of hard to get anything going. It's because you need time. You have to have time. You have to grow into the community. You have to sink your roots. You have to build all of those relationships, Joshua, so that you can make the big things happen. And this was the staff. The staff was there with the architects, really making decisions about adjacencies. This was the board going out and raising money. This was the community coming in and saying, we want this to happen. It was gutsy. And people were with it. They wanted to do it. people thought we were kind of crazy to try and do this thing. And I think sometimes the craziest ideas are the best ones
Yeah,
because
sure.
people don't believe it. They don't believe it's going to happen. And then when it does, it's like, wow.
Well, the word that you've used that keeps coming up for me too is community. And I'll say, my first year in DC was 2010. And the show that I did was in the Fitch. That was the sort of presenting of exactly that the Theater J production. And I say that because also what an example of an amazing way for this center to also be part of the community, to not only just present but to invite in. And I say 2010 because that I came in, I'll never forget seeing the theater for the first time. I'd graduated in 2009. And so in 2010, when I moved, it's just gorgeous. It's stunning. It's a stunning, almost monument that I would also argue has sort of not only represented something for DC, but specifically the Southwest, of DC, that and has continued to revitalize that. I want to go though back to sort of your creative work and what you're drawn to. You spoke a little bit about obviously planning a season and considering the makeup of DC and wanting to honor that. And that doesn't shock me from you. You made an offhanded comment about, I grabbed folks off of a bar stool in Juneau and had them tell a story. So there's something that you're clued into within the community, that word again. But I want to talk about what you're most drawn to as a director, because like you said, at Arena, you were doing everything from My Fair Lady to Oklahoma to The Originalist with the wonderful Ed Jarrow, and Mother Courage, who I think Kathleen Turner might have starred in that. But so you really run the gamut. So what are you drawn to as a director? And when you were planning a season, what were the shows where you felt, oh, it's essential that I direct this show?
Well, I think the shows that I'm drawn to are all the ones that you talked about.
There you go.
I I love work that's big and kind of overwhelming and has a lot to say. I love musicals that you can hum to. I don't like musicals you can't hum to. I like that form. I love new work. I really am drawn to political work because I think everything is political. Everything is political. And we started something called the Power Play Cycle, which is one play for every decade of American life. And before I left, we finished all of the commissioning of that whole cycle.
Wow.
And whether Hannah chooses to produce some of the plays, we'll see as time goes on. But she has a treasure trove of work just sitting there. The Originalist, which you mentioned, which was about Justice Scalia by John Strand, was one of those plays. And that had a hell of a run, not just in Washington, D.C., where it broke all the box office records of the Kogod Cradle. But we took it to California, we took it to Chicago, we took it to 59 East 59th Street, we took it all over the place. And Justice Ginsburg followed it. So I was able to interview her a few times, 2 or 3 times about it, because Scalia was one of her best friends. But for me, that's the kind of theater I love. We had a couple board members that decided to withhold any money for Arena because I was doing this play about Scalia, and they couldn't believe that we were doing something like that. And I said, because that's the point of theater.
Exactly.
That is the point of why we do what we do. And another really interesting play was Sovereignty, and that was by Mary Catherine Nagel. And that was about
Richard Thomas. Did he star in that? Was he in that?
No, that was Camp David.
Oh, yes.
Camp David was about the 1978 peace accords with Jimmy Carter, Menachem Begin, and Anwar Sadat,
Yes.
and also Mrs. Carter. And that ended up being a show that just shot as well, because people couldn't believe that here were three men that rolled up their sleeves and actually made a peace accord that still works.
Yeah.
You know, Israel and Egypt have not had a war since that time.
Mm-hmm.
It worked. Jimmy Carter came to see it, Mrs. Carter. I was able to go out with Jerry Rafshoon and interview the Carters out in Plains, Georgia.
Wow.
I mean, it was pretty amazing. And
Well,
then, then what I was going to say is Mary Catherine Nagel with her play, Sovereignty. That was a wonderful play too, about Native Americans in the Supreme Court and violence against women, which of course is horrifying all over America and in Native communities as well. And that was a beautiful play. And that was also a play where I had people, including reporters, come up to me saying, I just couldn't believe that any of this was true. And then at intermission, I looked it up and it is true. And other people have said, I feel so ignorant about Native Americans. And I said, yes, America's ignorant about Native Americans. You know, do you know how many Native American tribes there are? Well, no, I don't. Well, there's like almost 500. And do you know what this country is built on? It's built on the twin pillars of African Americans in slavery and 30 million Native Americans being murdered for their land. So that's what America's built on. And this is, I'm not saying this because it's anything new, because Mike Daisy has been talking about this. But because it's built on those two twin pillars, that's the rot that we continue to live through in one way or another. And that rot will never flow or go away until America rips all of that open. I mean, it's what's happening with Trump right now, right? The white nationalists, that's all about Native American people and African American people. And now he's just kind of shifted it so it's Latino people and Hispanic people and people from other countries. But America lives within that. That's what our prosperity is about. And so for me, these plays with the power plays, very important investigation in one form or another of that.
Well, as you say, you're incredibly political and somewhat to that, but a pivot from, but just because you mentioned it, for those of you who don't know, you were very close with Justice Ginsburg. Justice Ginsburg officiated your wedding with Suzanne, I believe.
Yes.
She was an avid theater goer. I met her at Arena after a play, but I also met her at Theater J. She came to see a play at Theater J. We did Our Class. I remember she came to see that. Obviously you were connecting, especially in DC of all places, with many figures, creative, political, and otherwise, but there was a real friendship that was formed there. How did that come about, and what did that relationship mean to you?
I think she loved artists. I think if she was not a lawyer, she would have loved to have been an opera singer. She would have loved to have been an artist. And so she was attracted to everything that we did on stage, Joshua. So she came to Arena a lot. She was often in the, opening nights. And that's where we formed a friendship. I mean, it was just a flyer for me to send her a note and say, I'm sure you're too busy to do this, but I would love it if you would officiate our wedding. I put down the date. She wrote back on the next post and she said, absolutely, I'm there. Let's let's make it happen. It's on my schedule now. Well, 3 weeks before Suzanne and I got married, she was at Arena, and she was there because we were doing all of these different scenes to show what the next season would be. And she was having a snack downstairs, and she pointed at me, and I went over to her and she said, "Your vows, you're late. Get them to me tomorrow." I called Suzanne, who was in Alaska working, and I said, okay. Justice Ginsburg just told me that we are late with our vows. You have got to help me finish these up, like right now, because I did not like being dressed by a Supreme Court justice, because she had very steely blue eyes. But she was always so kind. And when I would talk to her either at Arena or Glimmerglass, because she loved Glimmerglass, she was often there. And as you said, she was in theaters all over the city. She would always want to talk to me about this artist or that artist, or what this meant, or why they did this. And then I was always interested in talking to her about court cases. But of course, Ruth's brain is so large and so complex, and she would often speak so low and fast that you wouldn't always catch everything that she was saying. But I adored being anywhere within her vicinity, and I just felt really, really lucky to know her.
Of course. I want to ask you, I've not had the opportunity to ask many other arts leaders this question, and I was especially curious for you about leading during the pandemic specifically. And I know we've talked some about this, but I'm curious what you learned about when you were leading Arena during the pandemic, and what might have surprised you about artists. And just for our listeners, Molly, you started, I think you directed 2 films during the pandemic, or helped to produce, and also had a simple, but you have to know, impactful online sort of talk show of sorts called Molly's Salon, where you would interview various artists. So what was that time for you, and what did you learn about what it meant to lead an organization during the pandemic?
I adored it. I know, crazy, right? Because it was completely chaotic and nobody knew what to do. And I thought, okay. Got together with my group and said, we're going online. We're doing everything online. Let's make it happen.
Yeah.
So the salon, we raised a whole bunch of money online because we just got on within like 3 days and really talked to people. Sima Sueco did a whole artist program where artists could make things. It was the marketplace. It was the Arena marketplace. So Kate Baldwin would sing a song and would receive a fee for it. Somebody else would teach chess classes. Somebody else would do something else. So it was, okay, how are we going to help artists? How are we going to stay connected to the audience? So that was the idea behind something like Molly's Salon. I think we did like 60 of them.
Yeah.
I mean, it was intense, Joshua. And we just kept going with them. And I would always have like 2 people with me. It kept me out of trouble as well. But it also kept the conversation going. So if we can't see people in their seats, let's get to them where they are, which was online. Edgar Doby was really central to bringing in vaccinations into Arena. So we vaccinated thousands of people at Arena.
That's right.
So kind of turning it into something for the community, and made films, because we could make films outside where we couldn't make theater inside.
Right.
So it's like, okay, let's do this. And one film was all about the pandemic, and another film was really about Washington, D.C. and Washington, D.C. and the desire to become a state. And we did it through, again, hiring different writers to do monologues. And then I'd bring in different directors, or I would direct some of them, or I would produce it, or whatever, just this, this cacophony of voices,
Yeah.
and finding ways to stay with the public
Yeah.
and to stay with people at Arena and to keep people employed. That was one of my main deals, to try and do that.
And so, I do want to ask you about, when you realized, okay, 25 years, I think it's time to step down. Like, I think you mentioned you and Suzanne, the home you're in now, you started building 15 years ago or built 15 years ago or thereabouts. So you knew that obviously there's going to become a moment when you're like, obviously going to be stepping down. But how did you know it was time? And as artistic director emeritus, I believe, are you still staying involved? Are you consciously stepping back and giving Hannah her space? How's that working?
Yeah, I would say that I had always thought that I would retire when I was 70. And that had been in my mind for a while. And then I thought, I'm going to retire before this big wharf opens right in my view line across the street, because I didn't like it that it was dwarfing Arena, right? I like Arena to be its own power punch. And so, even though it was Arena that actually made the wharf happen, without Arena building this new center, yes, that wharf would have happened, but it would have taken another 10 years.
Right,
Right.
right,
It's
right.
because we were at Signature Building. And so I was talking to Suzanne about it. I didn't talk to board members. I didn't talk to anybody about it. I talked to like Suzanne and maybe two other close friends. That was it. Kind of thinking my way through it. And I realized, 25 years is it's a beautiful package. And internally, I knew I had done just about everything I wanted to do. So it's like, what else do I want to do at Arena? And you know that it's time also to transition if you feel like, oh, we're kind of hitting some of the same problems that we've hit before. It's time for somebody new to come in and evaluate those. And I also wanted, what's the next chapter for me? I've spent, 25 years there, 19 years at Perseverance Theater. I've spent my whole life as an artistic director taking
Yes.
care of other people, because
Yes.
that's really what it's about. Taking care of the community. Always thinking in that way, and being on a schedule that starts at 8 in the morning and goes until midnight, right? It's time for me to do something else. And so what I realized is, years before then, I was thinking, "Oh, I'm going to get back into ceramics. I'm going to get back to throwing." And so, about a year before I transitioned, and I like to call it evolved as opposed to retired,
Sure.
because retired sounds like you're sitting back on your heels. Evolved means you're going forward. You're always curious. So I'm more about the evolution. About a year before I left Arena, it was, I was thinking about it in my head. I started going to a studio in Washington, D.C., Hinckley Pottery. And I sat down at a wheel, and I realized I remembered absolutely nothing from many, many years before, having thrown pots. And then at a certain point, I realized, oh, did I just make this up? Did I make up
Was
this
this a
fantasy?
story? Yeah, exactly.
Was this a story?
Yeah,
Because a good friend of mine was a potter. Did I make up? I still don't know, Joshua. But I wanted to go before I evolved from Arena, because I didn't want to just show up with my little pottery bags and sit down at a wheel and realize I hated it. But I sat down at the wheel and I realized I loved it. It's difficult. It's a really hard craft. It's a hard art form. It'll probably take me 10 years to get really good at it. But I love it, Joshua, because the evolution of each piece is about 6 weeks. From when you first throw it, you dry it, you trim it, you bisque fire it. You've got more time in between that. You glaze it, there's more time there because you're always waiting. You're always in the process of waiting. It's like creating
a play,
a piece of theater.
Yeah, exactly.
Only it's me with the clay. It's me with the glaze. And it's me creating something useful that lasts. So I've gotten into bigger and bigger things. So now I'm throwing like 5 pounds, 6 pounds, 7 pounds, 8 pounds, which is a lot of clay.
Yeah.
And I love it. I love it. You know, I'm still like, I don't know what I am, beginner to intermediate, I guess. But I love everything about doing it. Here in Alaska, I'm doing hand building because there really aren't wheels here in Haines for me to be able to use. And that kind of triggers something different in my brain too. And I'm enjoying that. I'm doing a lot of cooking here. Like I made all these pickled onions yesterday and brought them to 2 different cabins. And the first cabin, she said, "Oh, I've got all this basil." So she gave me the gobs of basil.
Amazing.
Made all this great pesto. And then the second one, I left on the steps of another cabin and they knew it was me. And when we drove past, because we were looking for these bears, she ran out with a bag like this full of Dungeness crab that they just got. So cold, cold, cold from the waters around here and cooked within 10 minutes.
Amazing.
So there's a part of me that's just, it's living off the fat of the land.
Yes.
Finding ways to be curious about the world. Now I'm looking at all these spruce chips that are outside on the trees, and a young friend makes this like a spruce chip pesto. So I'm just trying to find out her recipe for that. And we have a big fair here in Haines, Alaska, which is a community of around 1,800 to 2,000. And so people from all over Southeast come in. And last year, I got all my friends to enter pies and cakes and cookies and photographs and all kinds of other stuff. So we're doing that again this year. And the best part, Suzanne, where's my ribbon? The best part I'm going to show you is I thought that what I made, because I was making a crisp, delicious crisp. And my family, when they tasted it, they said, "Oh my God, it's kind of raw." And I realized in the time it took me to drive from here to downtown, which is about, 20 minutes, it continued cooking in in the pan. And I won the best.
Wow. It's yes, it's the Alaska State Fair champion. What is that so
Alaska. And I also won this, and I won first place on photographs. Anyway, it's totally fun because I keep saying to everybody, "Let's go in, we can sweep." So now all my friends want to do things or ceramics or whatever. But that doesn't totally answer your question, but it does answer why I'm excited about my life now.
Well, and it sounds like, if I may, like you're finding a whole other subset of your own creativity.
Yep.
And I cook a lot too. I find it very meditative, and I like trying new things. It's a big part of my own. It engages the same synapses. Now, are you still? I imagine people still call you and are like, "Hey, Molly, would you want to come direct such and such the theater in town, Perseverance?" Are you taking a step back from the theater in particular at this point?
I mentor 3 different women from 3 different theaters.
Mm.
So I have time to do that. I will tell you what happens, Joshua, is people say, "Ooh, I want you to direct such and such," and I'll start to get excited. I'll go, "Oh, okay, that sounds interesting." And then they'll say, "Your due date for designs is," and I go, "No, not into it, not into it,"
Interesting.
because and now I'm doing Tai Chi with Suzanne, so I'm learning
Yes.
that form, and I just I I love learning new things. So I would say my art form right now is ceramics.
Yes.
Will I direct again? A friend of mine wants me to direct a film. He's got some film studios that are going. We've been talking about a project there. I might do that. So I'm just in a way staying open to the world.
Yeah.
And if the right thing comes, I'll smell it
Yes. Yes.
because I've always had a good sniffer, either
Yes.
for artists or for projects or for things for me, and I'll know if it's the right time.
What are
Do,
you?
do the people want to see what the view
Please show. Look
outside
at this.
is?
Look at this. There's
That's the
Suzanne,
view outside. There's Suzanne.
the amazing Suzanne. But look at that. That's a literal beach,
Yeah,
correct? A literal
yeah,
beach. And I can't remember if
and
this was
that's where the bears are.
and the humpback whale that you saw the other day.
Yeah, that was about 4 blocks from here.
Okay, 4 blocks away.
But
That's
it was amazing because we were driving and we saw some people stopped on the road, and Suzanne said, "Oh, I think I saw a whale." I was like, "Wow, that's coming really far up here." And we stopped and it was raining and miserable because it's been raining and miserable here. And we got out of the car and people were chitter chattering. And all of a sudden, right near the beach, very close to the beach, this giant prehistoric humpback came up. And it was like, oh my God. It's magic here. Because this water that I just showed everybody, if you go down the channel, it gets 2,500 feet down. The
wow.
mountains grow, they're right out of the water.
Wow.
They're right out of the
Wow.
water. I mean, this is not, oh, okay, then we've got this big landmass and blah blah blah. It's right out of the water. So they're it's fjords up here.
I'm
It's a
inviting
lot of
myself
glaciers and
again.
things like that. Come on up.
You think I'm joking? Molly, I've seen the pictures with Ed too that many times too. I'm
Hey, look,
jealous.
yeah, yeah. Ed is great. Ed is one of the great mushroom hunters
Is he?
because we have porcini mushrooms here in the forest, and my niece Sarah is fantastic with mushroom hunting, and golden chanterelles and winter chanterelles, and it's really been fun because my life before Joshua was completely obsessed with theater,
Of course.
making it, finding the right artists, getting the money, raising the money,
Of course.
being with board members, going out and seeing things. I mean, that was my life. And now I get to have an entirely different life. Who gets to have another chapter in life?
Yes.
And I wanted to do it while I'm still young enough to travel. So
Yes.
in the last 2 years since I evolved, we have been in Greece all the way through the Peloponnese, Crete. We've been to Sicily, Germany a couple times, including once to get our allergies removed, which is fantastic. We've gone back to Japan. We've been all through the Western United States driving, glamping, Suzanne and I, going and visiting a lot of the canyon areas, canyon lands, and a lot of Native American reservations. So we just go. We just go because this is a time to go and be in life. These are the go-go years.
And Suzanne's evolved too, right?
She's evolved too, because pretty soon you go to the slow go years at
Yeah,
some point,
exactly.
and then you go to the no go years.
Yeah.
So, Joshua, I want to stay in the go go years as long as I can. The only way you do
Yes.
that is by living your life.
Well, I guess my final question that I'll ask as part of that is the thing that I already said I wanted to ask you because I was really thinking about this. There are probably a handful or so, I mean, many, more than a handful, but not many folks, people in the world, artists who have been able to cross paths with, create, offer opportunity, strategize with, like yourself, the Eve Enslers, the Charles Randolph Wrights, the great producers, the shows that were all the shows, the Dear Evan Hansen's that were developed at Arena that you likely were part of, or even when we talk about The Chosen when we came in 2010. I remember you watching a run at and the Fitch and sharing thoughts. I mean, what has that meant to you, Molly, to and I'm not just talking in life in the theater, but to have been someone who has evolved literally in so many different ways and to have crossed paths with and been touched by or touched some of the great politicians, creatives, inventors of the life that we have known and lived up to this point.
That sounds like a pretty good life, doesn't it?
It does. It does.
Well,
That's
see,
why I have to ask what it
oh, I've,
means to you.
I've been really fortunate. I've been lucky. I've been lucky. I've met people in my life that have helped me and that I have helped make fantastic things happen. I'm really fortunate, and I know a lot of times people say that they're fortunate. People go, "Oh, well, that's it can't just be that way." Well, of course, you have to work your ass off. You have to make all the connections that you can. You have to have a really good nose. So if don't have a really good nose, believe me, nothing happens. And you have to bring people into your circle that you can support.
Yeah.
Like a lot of things about my life has been about how can I help somebody else get what they desperately want?
Yeah.
Because it's going to make the world a better place.
Yeah.
How can I do that? And like now, I'm just as political as I've ever been. Suzanne and I created the March on Washington for gun control, around 15 years ago. Now we march whenever we get the chance. We've got poster board in the back of our car with signs, and in Washington D.C., we'd see a rally and we'd just jump out of the car and go. This is a time for everybody to be politically active, even if you have not been.
Yeah.
Because what's happening in America is gruesome. It's gruesome. And we're going to win. I truly believe we are going to win and shut all of this treason down. It's going to happen. But it's going to take everybody. I think this weekend on the 14th, the No Kings Day, I think it's going to be a huge power punch that's going to run through America. And I think everybody's going to be shocked at the number of people that are coming out. LA, super brave. San Diego, super brave. Gutsy, trying like anything not to move into violence. I know there's been a little bit, but there hasn't been much. And he has just been waiting for all of these different opportunities to come in
muscle.
and to constantly show muscle, and it's horseshit. I was thinking the other day, most of us in America were not we were born into freedom. Most of us in America were born into freedom. We're not like the Russians that were born as serfs. So as Putin started doing everything over there, people just kind of took it. Here in America, we were born into freedom. We don't like anybody to be putting ties on us. We don't like anybody blocking us, stopping us. And I think it is that through the American people that is really going to push this whole administration out. And believe me, I can't wait.
Yeah, I know. It's a truly a whole other conversation. You know what you're making me think about is the amazing Dominique Morisseau is such a believer and artist as activist and hearing you say that you and Suzanne jump out of a car when you see a rally makes me it's it's about the intentionality of our day to day and what we do with our creative work on all levels
Yep.
in a lot
Yep.
of ways. Well, let me say this, you know, in the theme of evolution, we end every single episode have up until today, Molly, we have ended every single episode with what we call comfort food performances, where we name a performance that we've loved that we might come back to time and time again. But I was having the thought the other day how I want to evolve this, and my co-host doesn't even know this yet, and I'm making it so today. I want to start ending every episode with a cooking or a kitchen tip because I'm a big cooking and because I think all guests of any scale, even if it's heating, you know, melting marshmallows and peanut butter and chocolate chips together, has their own cooking or kitchen tip. And I feel like this would be, I'm a fan of this. I feel like you would have good ones. I think we should kick this off together for this episode.
Well, you tell yours first.
Okay, okay, I have one because I've got a plenty, and I'll tell you one that I think that I didn't know about and then I discovered and I loved it. And it's freezing fresh ginger. When you freeze fresh ginger, A, the ginger doesn't go bad. B, it's easier to grate. You can get a tablespoon super simply. It's easier to slice. So, and then you have ginger, which you're not going to use a ton of always as is, but you can use the same piece of ginger for 7 months. So freeze your ginger is my tip.
Wow. 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 How can I top that? I don't know if I can top that. I'm looking around the kitchen to think, what have I been doing recently? Because I have a lemon cream pie that is perhaps the best lemon cream pie that I have ever made. And with any recipe, Joshua, I always do something else in it. It's the improviser in me.
Yes.
So this one, the graham cracker crust that I make is not just a flat graham cracker crust. It is one that has cinnamon in it because that gives a little bit of spark.
Yeah.
And I always do a third of a cup of crushed macadamia nuts.
In the crust.
Yes. So it has a little bit of nuttiness along with that lemon cream and whipped cream that goes with it.
You always
So
know it's
that's
good when
my
you start
tip.
to. I'm literally salivating a little bit. That's when you know it's curious. I love that. Will you send me the recipe?
Yeah, sure.
Because I'm a big fan of lemon bars, lemon meringue pie. I'm a big fan.
Well, this is one that, Joshua, I'm going to enter this year. But I think I'm going to get knocked out by my sister. She's going to make
this is
Bridget, a rhubarb cream pie. And my other niece, Brenna, is a great baker. I don't know what she's going to do. My best friend, Kate, has been making a chocolate cake, but her husband, Mike, it's really his chocolate cake recipe. So when they drive up, that may be what they make. I don't know what everybody's going to make, but it's going to be fun.
When is it? When is the fair? It's June 10th.
No, it is July, like the 28th through August, like 3rd, something like that.
Okay. Well, fingers crossed.